New polling tapping into how Americans feel 1 year into President Trump's second term. 54% saying the presidency has made them feel uneasy. Many also saying Trump 2.0 has made them feel frustrated, unsafe, and exhausted. Given the latest protests in Minnesota over ICE raids, here's what the mayor of Minneapolis said this morning.
This is not about safety. What this is about is coming into our city by the thousands and terrorizing people simply because they're Latino or Somali.
Joining me now is our good friend Miles Taylor, former Homeland Security Chief of Staff. So, Miles, what is your initial reaction to this new poll? And is there a particular category which stands out the most? Maybe it's uneasiness or frustration or people not feeling safe.
I would start with the uneasiness and count me unsurprised. I think at a bare minimum to most Americans, this all seems just a little bit too crazy and maybe a lot crazy for most people. And Alex, forget the past year. Just look at the past week. Less than a week ago, Donald Trump started musing about canceling elections and seizing ballot boxes. Then he went into the week musing further about invoking the Insurrection Act to send thousands of U.S. troops into Minnesota to rough up more Americans, as you talked about in your last segment. And then he closed out the week by continuing his conversations about invading NATO and refusing to rule out military action against a NATO territory, putting us at odds with our best friends around the world to protect us. You just look at the past week, and if you are an American, of course, that makes you feel uneasy and unsafe. Not only is the president alienating us from the people around the world who were most likely to protect us in a conflict, he himself is making our communities less safe by militarizing them. So I don't see how it could be worse than that 1 year into this administration. I'm actually surprised that the numbers aren't even bleaker. But the reason I think they're not even bleaker than that, Alex, is that I think people don't want to believe what's happening to their country.
Let's go back in time a bit to the DHS when you were right there at the top during President Trump's first term. You are now among many expressing outrage over the ongoing ICE operations, particularly after that shooting in Minneapolis. So when you look at DHS Secretary Kristi Noem's recent actions, what do they say about the state of public trust?
Well, I think it's gone far beyond the Department of Homeland Security. Certainly it starts there. Right now, people don't have any confidence in what that department is saying. I mean, I don't care what your political affiliation is. If you are watching this and you have even seen the Department of Homeland Security social media posts, you can no longer have confidence in that department that's supposed to protect you from another 9/11. They post memes and jokes. They lie. They spew hate. It's foul. It would be foul if it was just some troll in the corner of the internet, but it's a taxpayer-funded department, the third largest department in the federal government. Add to that, Alex, that every single day we are seeing very obvious violations of law committed by ICE agents on tape. And people don't differentiate between ICE and the FBI. It's not like when you see a law enforcement officer go down the street, you ask for their badge and you ask what division they are in. When people lose confidence in one federal law enforcement agency that they see all the time, it lowers their confidence in the policing system writ large. And guess what? That makes all of us actually less safe because people are less inclined to contact law enforcement if they have an issue. They have lower trust in law enforcement, and it's more likely that the criminals will prevail. And we're already starting to see that happen. Public confidence in law enforcement is plummeting, and responsibility for that lays at Kristi Noem's feet, but ultimately at the president's.
Is it at all helpful? Or what is the reaction by sending the message that you have at least 70 Democrats talking about impeaching Kristi Noem, even though it probably is not going to happen?
Yeah, well, I'd agree with you. I mean, the analysis is it's probably not going to happen this year. That would be my caveat. If I were Secretary Noem, and if I was Chief of Staff at the department advising her, I would say, you need to be worried about 2027. You need to be worried about what happens if the midterms erase Republicans' razor-thin margins that are the only thing I think really keeping her from impeachment. And you need to think about whether you want to stay here for that, because it could possibly be a successful impeachment. Now, I would also say this, Alex. Ultimately, I think the real articles of impeachment that need to be filed need to be against the president. I don't say that as a political talking point. I'm not a registered Democrat. I say that because there are very obvious violations of the law, high crimes and misdemeanor under this presidency, but don't take my word for it. Take the word of federal judges. There have been more constitutional rulings against Donald Trump by federal judges last year than any year in the modern presidency. Again and again and again, his administration is willfully defying the Constitution. But look, if that starts with his cabinet members, then by all means, I would say to opposition members of Congress, go ahead. And what they are doing is laying the legal foundation for the possibility that they retake the House and the Senate and can actually move forward with such proceedings.
Look, we could have an entire conversation revisiting the issue of the Havana syndrome, but quickly, there's been some new speculation about the cause of it, which you suffered from twice. And just to remind folks, it was a syndrome first reported in 2016 when U.S. Embassy staff members experienced some sudden, unexplained illnesses. That was in Cuba, and then cases later emerged worldwide. Investigators have long debated, Miles, if a foreign-made targeted energy device was responsible. MS now has confirmed a new report saying the Pentagon has spent over a year testing a device that it purchased undercover. Some believe this device could be linked to the unsolved syndrome, Miles. So take us back quickly to when you got sick, what it felt like, and what convinced you this was a targeted attack.
Yeah, look, I mean, this was several years ago. This is before I came out against Donald Trump. This is while I was still in the administration. And this is after the Department of Homeland Security, under our leadership, took a very strong stance against Russia and its intervention in 2016. That made the president angry, but I think it made Vladimir Putin even more angry. And then there were two incidents in April 2018 and June 2018 at my home where we heard very strange sounds that caused us to be dizzy and nauseous. In the case of the partner I was with at the time, that lasted for days and days and days. I had no idea that there was even the possibility that the things that we were seeing happen overseas might be happening in the United States. But after that had happened to me, Alex, reports started to crop up through the grapevine in the interagency, in government, of people worried that something similar had happened to them domestically. Now, it took me years, Alex, to agree to go talk to folks in the open about that because it's embarrassing. You don't think people are going to believe you. People had been doubting the Havana syndrome victims. They didn't want to talk about it. And I understand that because, you know, what are you going to say? I was zapped by a device. I don't know who did it. I don't know what it was. But all I do know is that there were medical consequences. I mean, I had a doctor's appointment this past week about structural issues to my nervous system that we suspect could be tied to this thing. Now, the last thing I would tell you, Alex, is if this is indeed a foreign adversary, if they indeed have found such a device, the operative word here to respond is consequences. That is what must happen. If a foreign adversary did this in people's homes and sent, you know, agents in to beat up diplomats and government employees and their spouses and their children and bloodied them up, we would respond with overwhelming force. We would be going to war with those adversaries. But because it's a device you can't see and because it's unseen injuries, people don't know how to respond. But this administration needs to deliver consequences for whoever is ultimately deemed to be responsible.
Let's stay on this story as things develop. We'll have you back. We'll talk more about it, my friend. Thank you much, Miles.